Now turn to the appendix in your workbook and complete the exercise, choosing to solve that problem in one of the 5 assertiveness skills we just detailed. When you choose the skill, use 4 to 5 sentences that would make the solution effective. We looked at the techniques, the skills, and the tools that allow you to respond assertively in challenging situations. Remember that assertiveness is a choice that only you can make. You will become prepared to make that choice effectively and comfortably. So now let's take a look at the 4 communication styles we've seen, combined with the 5 assertiveness skills we've covered. Turn to page 19 of your workbook, and we will start. In dealing with passive people, now remember, they are the ones who want others to read their minds. They accept losing as an outcome because they usually do lose. They rarely speak up for what they want, or when they do it so tentatively, so apologetically, or so ineffectively that other people don't respond or provide what that passive person wants. As you listen to the following situation, think about the answer to this question. Of the 5 techniques we covered in Volume 3, and let me review them for you: declaration, confrontation, compromise, camouflage, and accountability, which would be the most effective strategy for dealing with this passive person? Check off the technique or techniques that you think would be most effective. Once you've chosen the style or the styles, please write 3 to 4 sentences as to what that style would really sound like if you chose to use it.
Great, you're right on time, because we've got a lot of work to do for this sales conference coming up.
So I would imagine.
I know, I've been going through everything we need, basically pulling the background from past conferences. I've gone through the budget from last year, and taking into account some of the additions that they want this year, I think I've come up with a workable plan.
Okay.
And as for the timetable, well, it only looks bad on paper, but after you get into it, you'll realize it's even worse than it looks.
Well, I'm here to help.
I've broken out the project tasks into 2 headings, internal and external. The internal tasks deal with the sales staff, including the invitations, the opening night reception, keynote address, you know.
Uh-huh.
And the external tasks are focused more around the logistical part of the conference, dealing with the hotel, setting up schedules, some number crunching.
Okay. So, what do you want me to do?
Well, just tell me which set of tasks, internal or external, that you'd like to handle. We'll go from there.
Oh, well, it doesn't matter much to me. You decide, and then whatever you don't do, I'll take care of.
So before we answer the actual questions to this situation, let me ask you an equally as important one. How many of you have ever needed or had to deal with someone like Sandra? How many of you have done that? Let me just see a show of hands. Aren't they frustrating? Don't you know that they want to say something, but they just won't spit it out? And in fact, isn't the easiest way to deal with that passive person just to go like gangbusters, just to roll right over them? How many of you have ever knowingly done that? Yeah. How many of you have ever done that to your children? You've given them 10 seconds to answer. They haven't chosen to answer in 10 seconds. So you assume, all right, mom's going to make the decision, dad's going to make the decision. It's easier to deal with passive people by allowing them to have no input. What is the best strategy for dealing with this kind of person? Let's look at one possible right way response.
Look, Sandy, these are 2 really different sets of tasks. One is dealing with people and the other with logistics and schedules. I'm sure you have a preference.
Oh, well, it doesn't matter much to me. You decide, and then whatever you don't do, I'll take care of.
Sandy, it seems to me that you might prefer one set of tasks over the other. Now, if you tell me which one it is, you can do it. But if you don't tell me, I'll just have to guess, and I'll probably guess wrong.
Well, if it's all the same to you, I'd really like to work with the logistics. You know, the hotel and the numbers, and let you deal with the invitations and the sales reps. I'm not very good with those kinds of things.
Great. Well, we're on our way, so let's break out these plans and see where we are.
This response gives Sandra permission to speak up about what she wants, and most importantly, holds her accountable for her not getting what she wants if she doesn't speak up. And it works. You saw Sandra respond. What is the best strategy in dealing with this kind of person? As the example, as you saw Sandra. Who would like to give me an answer on what style you chose and what language you used to reinforce that style? Kat, what style did you choose?
I chose declaration.
Okay, and what did you say?
I would say something to the effect that since this is such a big project, I divided it into two categories, internal and external, and I need you to handle one of those categories. With your creativity and attention to detail, I think you do very well with the internal portion. Are you willing to take ownership of the internal portion and the task involved?
And that's an excellent declaration. Excellent. I'd like us to go one more step, just going a bit further with your declaration in the following way. Did anybody get the idea that if given that, if I'm being passive, I may still choose to stay passive and say, oh, that's what Kat wants me to do. That's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to take yours as the exact perfect intro, and let me add to it. Did anybody add another style to that? Okay, Holly, what did you do with this one?
Well, I added specific tasks as well, so that she knows exactly what is expected of her.
Good.
What and when.
Good.
I want 15 calls made, I want 18 copies bound, and I would like this done by 12:30. Any questions?
So no questions there on what we're expecting, and no questions on what she better produce. Interesting that both of the techniques you're using here just scream of assertiveness. Just absolutely scream of assertiveness. Excellent. The primary technique used in this situation was accountability. Michelle told Sandra that she needed to make a decision or the decision would be made for her, and that decision would probably not be to her liking. In holding Sandra accountable, did both people end up getting the best possible outcome? What do you think? Yes. Sure. A logical response certainly is yes, because Michelle wanted the best work from Sandra. And she knew that if Sandra really would prefer a portion of it, she would do a better job. It's important to note that there was a secondary technique that was used in this response. Did you find it? And in truth you did. And your responses indicated that. It was declaration. Sandra actually said what she would prefer, which allowed her, in this case, to number one, get it, and number two, to take a measure of control back over her work. Both of those results contribute to Sandra's doing a better and more complete job. Of the three remaining techniques, why were they not the best possible choice? Let's take a look at confrontation and decide why that wouldn't be your best primary choice. First reason is if Michelle had confronted, she would have won. And the question has to be, what would she have won? Would she have gotten the best work from Sandra? What do you bet? No, probably not. Would she have gotten Sandra's cooperation and respect? Again, probably not. Confrontation speaks directly to consequences. Does Michelle want to establish consequential behavior at this point? And most importantly, do you think it's necessary? No. As soon as I begin to establish consequences for someone doing a good job, I'm running the risk of the easiest response to simply not do the job. In this case, confrontation is taking a big stick to a very small problem. But what about compromise? Do you see that as a possibility? or an option? Good. Why not, Jane?
I don't think there's any dealing to be done.
There's no compromise. The point that's real clear here is that they're splitting a project in half. There are different tasks, but they're both on the same side. There's no compromise side to side for getting the total project finished. There were two opposing types of tasks, but there are not two opposing sides. Both Sandra and Michelle, again, are on the same side. Now, if you think that camouflage might work, let's look at the three applications. In non-response, Sandra would get nothing, and that's certainly in nobody's best interest. Michelle would have affected no change whatsoever in Sandra's behavior. Remember, in dealing with a passive person, it's so easy to roll right over them. In limited response, Sandra could have picked up on the one piece she wanted to and hoped, and get this, or maybe hinted by a raised eyebrow or a smile, but again, remember, that's hoping and that's hinting. And it's also hardly ever effective. If you don't ask for what you want, you probably are not going to get it. If from Michelle's point of view she had accepted limited response, Michelle would have been relying upon visual and vocal cues that may or may not have told the entire story. The result of that reliance could easily have been a less than top-notch performance by Sandra. And let me ask another question here. Do you know people who have mastered the art of the vocal and the visual cues to send a message to you that isn't really the accurate message? Have you worked with people like that you can't read their face? Have you worked with people like that seem to always have the right demeanor? And in fact, have any of you ever put on a face that didn't tell the truth? How many of you will admit in front of the world that you have on occasion done that? Absolutely. Now, what about the final component of camouflage called clouding? Had Michelle used clouding in this situation, remembering that the definition of clouding is responding to anything other than the information at hand, Michelle would have been giving Sandra no opportunity to perform well. In fact, clouding has no place here whatsoever if either Michelle or Sandra choose to stay on task. And in fact, any response from the camouflage levels, which again are used for not dealing rather than dealing, would have been totally inappropriate. This is a situation needing to be addressed, worked on, and completed with facts.
This is the end of Side 6. Please replace this with Side 7 to continue with assertive communication skills with Carol Price.